Welcome to my very wet and very battered homestead. It's late December and I'm enjoying a hot cup of tea in the garden while I look at everything that needs doing and repairing after really horrible weather in December. It's a Christmas present from one of my sons. I've got an insulated mug. Makes such a difference from having cold tea. I'm really good at like putting my mug down and wandering off to do something and coming back to it being all cold. To be perfectly honest, I'm a little bit disheartened with the way it all looks. I think a lot of people are feeling that now because the storm that we had earlier in December with 90-mile-an-hour winds here, there's so many trees over. The fields around me have trees fallen over, all up the lane, the whole county. Trees just fell everywhere. We were without electricity for a few days, which was cold because that also operates the central heating, and I had to cook on the wood burner, but you know, we got through it. And then since then we've had two smaller storms, so everything that was battered then got battered again. I am lucky that my trees stayed up. There is damage here. 3 shed roofs are going to need serious work. 2 of them need completely replacing. I haven't checked the third yet because it's also been raining and I don't want to get up a ladder and look at a roof in the rain. And my greenhouse, I lost quite a bit of glass from that, but it could be a lot worse, and for a lot of people it was. So my polytunnel is still up. I thought I would give you a tour of the homestead as it is now. In real life, there's still a lot of things where it just got blown by the storm because, as I said, it's been pretty yucky since then, and we've just come out of several days of really thick fog as well. It's been a bit of everything, although, bit of happy news, on Boxing Day, which is my birthday, it was gorgeous. I mean, blue skies, sunshine all day. I had my 3 kids here and we went to the beach for a walk, and all 3 of them ended up in the sea, the mad things. It was absolutely gorgeous. It was one of those lovely, clear, cold winter days that I hope we get more of in January. So I'll start with the polytunnel, and the top bit has things that were shoved here when the storm went from a category sort of amber to red. It's the worst weather that anybody's known here in years, decades. So on the bench here I've got some beautiful sprouting broad beans. I sprouted them in the module trays because there's lots of rodents here and they do like broad beans. So these are my backup ones, and quite a few are to go in the polytunnel here in some of the gaps. So apart from the fact that the polytunnel really needs a clean, there's a lot to eat in here. It's fantastic, and the garlic is sprouting. I grow garlic inside and also outside in the garden. Inside garlic doesn't get rust, and it tends to be a little earlier and a little bigger, and this is why I do both. Because the weather has been really quite bonkers this winter, we've had temperatures which are much milder than they should be, so things which really should not be going to flower until the spring are flowering. So I'm just leaving them every day that it's sensible weather. I open the polytunnel doors for the day, so if there are any insects out and about, once that goes into flower, it'll be some forage for them. They're edible as well, those shoots, but I have plenty of other things. Now this is my undercover asparagus, and that is totally confused. It's mostly gone dormant or is going dormant, but there's still a few shoots that were growing, and I think because it just got really quite warm. This and bit here, if you just ignore my whirligig washing line which had to come in with the storm, that's where I'm going to put the broad beans. So I'm getting the benches set up ready for the spring, and in here one of the changes this winter is going to be widening this path that I'm walking on, and that's for the courses that I run here, to make the benches more accessible for people. And I'll be mulching them with wood chip. I've got lots and lots of branches and twigs that I can chip up. One of the jobs for the next week is go round the polytunnel and gather up all the leaves that are sort of dead or dying on the ground. This is not because I'm super fancy, but because they create a habitat for things like slugs. And then that can either go in the compost heap or into the duck run. Ducks love greens. This is a macroot lime. It's not completely frost hardy, so when the weather's really chilly, I cover it up. In the autumn, I didn't do much planting in the orchard area because I'm doing a lot of changes here, and I left all the leaves that fell on the ground. There's some green manure, there's some fallen leaves, and there's also some weeds because, as I said, it's been mild and weeds are still germinating. So the path alongside the polytunnel, I'll be digging a trench and backfilling that with gravel to help with drainage here. And all of the apple trees need a really good prune. So I'm being very, very hopeful that we'll have some lovely dry days in January so I can get that done. And then I can chip the wood and use that to mulch the path, which is great for feeding the soil life as well. So the brassicas in here are just kind of spare ones that I popped in mostly. And already we're getting spring bulbs coming up. Down here on the ground, that's part of one of the shed roofs, so it needs collecting up, and pallets, which are the last part of the pallet composter. So this shed really got bashed up, poor thing. And there's 2 bays of the pallet composter and our wildlife pond. The brambles have been a real problem. It's not that I've got anything against brambles. Obviously they're great for wildlife and they produce lovely fruit, but they're not actually meant to be here. I live in a very rural location and there's plenty of brambles to forage from. And what these are doing are trying to take over the garden. It's been a very wet year and many things have not thrived. It's been quite gloomy a lot of the time, but brambles have been loving life. So I am actually looking forward to cutting these back and getting them under control. I don't want them in the garden, I want them in the local hedgerows instead. However, other things, you know, look at the old dead tree here with all the ivy going up. I mean, that's an amazing habitat for so many things. The plastic here caught on the stock fence and in the garden, that's nothing to do with me, that blew here during the storm. So there's lots and lots of pruning to be done here, and also mulching inside our fruit cage and pruning in there as well. This large Brassica cage got very bashed up, but it is fixable. I'll just need to repair where the netting got torn and everything inside blew over, which at least it didn't like blow all over the garden. It was fairly self-contained. And more brambles. Now this area here is very, very light. It gets a lot of sunshine, and so I am going to be mulching this winter and making this a growing space and not a brambly space for storing twigs, which it has been this year. There's always projects to do, and this area, the garden, it's almost entirely managed just by myself, which is why it's not all pristine. The pristine gardens that you see on social media, etc., they're pretty much entirely run by either people who don't need to work or people who are using a team in order to get things done. Now this is a large planter that is being moved from this area to a different part of the garden, and that got blown about as well. These sacks contain the compost from the large planter that I'm moving, and look at the rhubarb. This is Timperley Early, and it really lives up to its name. It always is early, although this is a little bit earlier than it ought to be. The weeding here, where this bit of grass got in, sort of snuck in, I'll do that by hand with a trowel. And the green bit further back, that's mostly green manure. So our beautiful barn, literally anything that was going to fly about got shoved in there. So that's why it looks like Steptoe's yard. But it won't take long, just an hour maybe, to tidy that up. This bed here, which I made in the spring, is full of things that are flourishing, which is lovely. And the grassy bit next to it, between that and the orchard beds, I've decided that I'm going to mulch that as well this winter and make that into a path made out of wood chip, which will be less slippy because that's sloped, and also extend the growing area. The wind blew out several panes of glass and shattered them, so that was obviously the first thing I cleared up as soon as it was safe to do so. And I need to order either replacement glass or polycarbonate. I haven't decided yet, but that's quite an important job because I want to get sewing in here soon. Again, stuff dumped on the floor. That was literally putting everything away as quickly as possible when the storm warning went up to red and I knew things were going to be a lot worse than we'd anticipated. Here in the back garden, the broad beans are popping up. These are Aquadulce Claudia, and these were direct sown. Now I find that my little rodent friends don't tend to eat the beans so much here in the back garden. This might be because it's more open and it's more exposed to the predators. We've got all kinds of birds of prey here. The outside garlic is coming up. I've got hardneck, softneck and elephant garlic growing in the garden. Baby leeks and brassicas that blew over. So some of my purple sprouting broccoli, actually the wind was so strong, it ripped it out of the ground and I don't know where it is. It's vanished completely. So these got blown over, I propped them up, and then we had another storm and they got blown over again, so I'm propping them up again today. These are flower sprouts, are absolutely delicious, and these are ready to pick. At the back here is a lot of parsnips, which I had hoped to dig up for Christmas dinner, or some of them at least, but the ground was saturated. We'd had so much rain. It was absolutely, completely soaking wet. So I decided to get some from the local shop and just let the ground dry out a bit. I've got plenty of radicchio still to harvest, which is lovely, particularly after eating so much rich food over Christmas, to have the opportunity to eat radicchio salads. The lovely tart flavour, very cleansing. There's some weeds at the back there, and in front there's a few weeds, but mostly what's left of the green manure. Now, one of the things I have realised for this garden here, the back garden, is when it's really, really windy and really wet, it's creating havoc with the compost mulches. It's not so bad in the orchard, which is a bit more sheltered. And this is one of the reasons why my beautiful views, which I don't know if you can tell, it's far reaching right across to distant mountains, creates a wind tunnel round the side of my house. So looking forwards, I'm going to use more green manures here next year. It's a bit late for sowing them now. You can sow green manures in the spring, but I want to be able to plant my first seedlings in March and April. So it's not a practical solution here for the spring. as well as some compost being put down. I think I'll also do a bit of chop and drop just to help protect the surface. And if that doesn't break down over the winter, it'll just be a light sprinkling, then I'll rake it off before planting, because Wales is very sluggy. I lost a couple of broccoli plants from these planters in the storm, but the rest are hanging on in there, if at a jaunty angle. I'm planting out more of this gravelly driveway because it's just so sunny here. It's a shame that it's just got my car on it. So a few more planters will be coming here this year and extending how much we can grow. Look, we've got some blue sky. Isn't that lovely? One of the key things for me to do over the next couple of weeks is to get the greenhouse sorted and ready for sowing aubergines. They're a bit of a thing for me. I really like growing aubergines. Other than that, and some onions, but the onions don't need heat. They can go in trays in the polytunnel. There isn't a right lot that I'm worrying about sowing. I am having a brilliant time though, sorting out the seedless and planning what I'll be growing here this year. There's going to be a lot more different kinds of kale, so it's one of the things coming up in 2025. I hope you've enjoyed this tour. I'm sorry it's not really beautiful and, you know, polished looking, but it is very realistic. I think it'd be nice. We've got a couple of days of rain coming up, and then please, 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 let's have lovely, cold, crisp January. Wouldn't that be lovely? Plenty of sunshine.